All right, welcome everyone. Really delighted at the turnout. I want to thank the City of Mentor for inviting me to come and speak about one thing that I really love to talk about, which is the Buckeye Trail. This presentation, every time I give it, it gets longer, and so I'm going to try not to ad-lib on the stuff that I usually ad-lib on, so we can keep it down to a reasonable time so you don't hear my life story on the Buckeye Trail. The presentation is going to be primarily about the Little Loop, but before I get started into the Little Loop, I want to give you some history and background on the Buckeye Trail itself and how it got started. To introduce myself, I am Randall Roberts. I am a trustee for the Buckeye Trail Association. I began hiking the trail about 9 years ago, and I did finish at Findlay State Park. It took me 8.5 hours doing it on weekends, and I just saved 10 minutes if I go on. So in 1958, there was an article published in the Columbus Dispatch. The title of the article was called "The Buckeye Trail So Far It's Just an Idea." It was written by an employee of ODNR, but he wrote it under a pen name. He didn't want to give the impression that this was a state trail initiative. It was just a private idea that he had, and he invited some other members to join him on that idea, and in 1959 they formed the Buckeye Trail Association. So the original plan for the Buckeye Trail was, and I've got a laser pointer but it doesn't work on the screen, so I apologize for that, but the original plan was to go from the Ohio River in Cincinnati up on the southwest corner of the state up to the northeast corner with a trail. The woman pictured in this picture is Emma Gatewood, and I have a slide in here to remind me not to spend so much time talking about Emma Gatewood because I can spend 30 minutes to 45 minutes talking about her alone. So if you don't know who she is, I encourage you to find out who she is. There's a book by Ben Montgomery, Grandma Gatewood's Walk, and there's also a wonderful documentary by Eden Valley Enterprises from Lorain County called Trail Magic. So look for the DVD in the library, Trail Magic, or Ben Montgomery's book. The importance of Emma Gatewood, besides the fact that she was the first woman to solo through hike the Appalachian Trail at age 67 and the first person to ever do it twice, and she did it a third time. But the key thing is she was from Ohio, and she was one of the first board members of the Buckeye Trail Association. In 1960, we actually started blazing the trail. So in the 60s, it kind of gone through a couple different evolutions as the Buckeye Trail Association found the right route to go, figured out where the best places to go. And then by 1970, we actually had a finished trail from Cincinnati to Lake Erie. This other loop on the southeast part was kind of an idea for an expanded loop. And the one thing you see going on here is it starts to go up north from Cincinnati. So the original vision was met. But in 1968, the National Trails Act was passed, which designated the Appalachian Trail, the Pacific Crest Trail, and the Continental Divide as National Scenic Trails. It also designated the North Country Trail as a possible trail for future study, and that trail was meant to go from New York to North Dakota. And the idea was that as it came in from Pennsylvania, it would join the Buckeye Trail down to where it terminated at Cincinnati, and then head north along the Little Miami River Scenic Trail and through the Miami-Erie Canal Corridor. So the Buckeye Trail Association, rather than waiting for congressional approval for the North Country Trail, says, we blaze trails, that's what we do, let's go ahead and get started. So the Buckeye Trail Association started blazing that trail. And then 78, once you get pretty close to Toledo, if you make a right-hand turn, you add another couple hundred miles and you have a loop. And so in 1980, that loop was finished in Brecksville Reservation near Deer Lick Cave. This photo was taken in March of 1981 to celebrate the completion of the loop. And in 1980, the North Country Trail did become a National Scenic Trail, which is 4,600 miles. And they recently passed Congress legislation to expand it to Vermont. So the NCT will be busy adding some more trail to that. In 1993, the American Discovery Trail was launched. So if 4,600 miles isn't long enough for you, you can hike from Delaware to California on the American Discovery Trail. It at 6,800 miles has a northern and southern route. When it comes in from West Virginia to Chester Hill, it too joins the Buckeye Trail until it gets to Cincinnati and breaks up into the northern and southern route. So when you're hiking in here, you're hiking the North Country Trail, the Buckeye Trail, and the American Discovery Trail. In 1999, it was designated as Ohio's Millennium Trail for the bicentennial. And in 2010, pretty much the trail is what we know it as today. The Wilderness Loop was added through the Wayne National Forest. We leased first, and now we own Buckeye Trail Barn in the Beal Homestead down by Tappan Lake. Buckeye Trail members can camp there. There's showers and kitchen facilities. And then so today, we're 1,400 miles long, and the trail keeps fluctuating. When I hiked it, my mileage added up to 1,428. There were places that were closed due to logging, and they were actually shorter for me, and the BTA kept adding trail behind me as I went back, so I didn't have to go back. It's pretty interesting that I can say I've hiked the entire Buckeye Trail, but today there's segments I haven't hiked yet because they added since I finished, or as I was finishing. We are the longest loop trail in the nation. We've been saying that, and no one's argued with it, so we're pretty sure that's true. I do believe we are either the 8th or 12th, and my memory's faulty on that, the longest trail in the nation, 8th or 12th. So last time I gave the presentation, someone shouted out we're in the top 12, so I will go with that. We go through 48 of the 88 counties in Ohio. It's broken up into 26 sections, and we log about 15,000 volunteer hours a year, and I personally think that's understated because a lot of our volunteers enjoy what they do, and they kind of treat it as a hobby, and they don't really keep track of that. If you record your mileage, you don't get more money, but we think it's important because we do leverage that against grant applications. So I'm going to give you some basics on how to hike the trail. We're going to start with the blazing and how the trail is marked. It's marked by blazes that are 2 inches wide and 6 inches tall. They're on trees and telephone poles primarily, but they can also be on rocks in the backs of signs and on guardrails and pretty much anything that's vertical. And even horizontal, if we mark in a bike path, we'll put the blazes on the trail. We have a standard color, and that is Sherwin-Williams Sweeping Blue. When I say that, people giggle, and I go, why are they laughing? And I realize, oh, you know what? I kind of laughed the first time I heard that it was Sherwin-Williams Sweeping Blue. And I should talk about that. The marking is important because we go all over the state, and we join other trails that might be marked with different paint schemes, yellow, blue, darker blue, green, brown. So color is important because what if you saw that? It's no longer 2 inches by 6 inches, but us trail hikers, the Buckeye trail hikers, we know that is Sherwin-Williams Sweeping Blue. We recognize that shade. What if you saw that? There's hardly a blaze on there, but we would pick up on that color. It is said that Emma Gatewood picked the color, and the blue is not readily seen in nature. When she hiked the AT, it was white, but if it was covered with snow or the white moss that you sometimes get, it kind of blended in. These blazes are on the current towpath trail, and I'll talk about where that occurs in my presentation. But the Buckeye Trail was there before the towpath trail was improved. The trail went on the primitive towpath. And then when they widened that and became a towpath trail and the parks took over it, we're not permitted to blaze there, and I'll talk about that too. So these are old blazes that won't be touched up, but we're not taking them down either. So following the blazes, a single blaze means the trail is pretty straightforward. That doesn't mean it's straight. If it's in the woods, it'll meander through the woods. It just means it's obvious. We mark our turns with a double blaze, with the top blaze being offset in the direction. So if you want to test yourself on that blaze, you can figure out if that's a left or a right. And I hope you all say that's a right, and you won't get lost. There are other kind of blazes, one on top of the other, which simply put means pay attention. It's kind of an alert blaze. It means that there might be something that you need to pay attention to. The example I like to give is if you're hiking along a nice gravel path, and the path turns to the left, but the Buckeye Trail goes straight into the woods, and we blaze that with a straight blaze, you might have a tendency to follow that nice little gravel path, and then 20 minutes later, the guys you're hiking with say, has anyone seen a blaze? And then you realize that, oh, you turn it. So that's a good location to put a double blaze where it's pay attention. Another case might be you come out of the woods and you come to the road, and you go through a field across the road. A straight blaze there, and a hiker might go, wait, there should be a turn blaze here. I'm either going to go left or right. because they might not see the blaze that's on the other side of the field on the woods where it begins. But if you put a double blaze there, the hiker needs to know, okay, there's something not obvious, I need to look a little more, and not just a blaze that's fallen down on the tree, which happens a lot. The trail may also be marked with carcinite markers. These are great because we can actually put information on the trail. This one on the left shares with the North Country Trail. We can put closed to motor vehicles. We can let people know that we're on the Buckeye Trail, and I'll mention that. And those might be used where it isn't a field and there's no trees to paint, or maybe we just need to call attention to something closer to the road, or places that we need a carcinite marker to make it a little more obvious. Also, landowners that don't allow us to blaze. Summit Metro Parks is a good example. When I first started hiking the trail, the map said to follow the Salamander Trail until you get to the Oak Leaf Trail, and then go north, and then until you get to the Deer Run Trail. And so when you're hiking there, every time you got to a trail junction, you had to get out the map and read it. Since then, the Summit Metro Parks does a really good job at putting these arrowheads with a blue BT in them, and the arrowhead will be oriented in the direction of the trail. So now when you come to the trail junction, there's a post, and that arrowhead with the Buckeye Trail logo will either go left or right or straight, and it makes it a lot easier to follow. You don't have to keep pulling out your map. Speaking of maps, the Buckeye Trail, as I mentioned, is broken into 26 sections, and each section has its own unique feel. It's named after a town or a unique feature of that section. They cover 46 to 65 miles, and each section has its own map. And the section maps are printed in color and waterproof paper stock, and they fold up to fit in your pocket. They contain all the information like campsites, and other facilities. They give you the mileage in between landmarks, which is very helpful for planning your hikes. Roads, streams, geological, topographical features, historic information. This is one reason I really loved hiking the Buckeye Trail. I learned so much about Ohio history, and we print those on our maps. And the example I like to give is there's a house that was used to print counterfeit money way back in the early 1900s. They actually printed paper and coin. And there was fake rooms in the house, there was fake chimneys, and they would put a lantern in the attic to signal the riverboats when a fresh batch of money was ready for pickup. There's no monument outside of that. The first time I hiked, it was just an old house. The last time I hiked, the house is starting to fall down. So eventually that history is going to go away, and you would only know that by reading the maps. So some hikers don't like that. They think our maps are too wordy. I think the compromise now is that we put those historic notes in a shaded blue background, so the hiker knows that you don't need that for navigation, and if you want to read it, you can read it. I like to read all that blue stuff ahead before I go hike, and I can kind of watch for those and look for them. There's emergency phone numbers on our maps, which I think is great. I know you can Google all that, but it's there for you. And I leave a trail plan with my wife when I go hiking, and I don't have to look up the numbers. And you'll be crossing counties as you hike some of these sections, and so the county sheriff is there and the state highway patrol is there. It also is helpful for the hiker itself because you have those numbers with you instead of having to look them up somewhere. Maps are updated periodically as needed. We have some sections that have stayed the same for the last 15 years, especially on the Miami-Erie Canal. Other places where we're trying to move from road to off-road, and we negotiate with land managers to be able to do that, it's been a lot more fluid. But when they do change, we put on our website the trail alerts and map updates. So a trail alert would be a temporary situation where there's some construction that has closed the bridge, and we want to alert you to that, or there's some logging operations, or some other dangers or things that you might need to look out for. The map updates are more permanent, like if we have acquired some property or a right-of-way to allow our trail, that will make that as a map update. And it's published on our website before we actually print to update it to the map. So it's very important to not only just get the map, but also check the website for update, or you'll find yourself leading a 12-mile hike that you really meant to be only 8, and the people being very upset with you about that. That's just a hypothetical. Maps are for sale from our website. The prices are close. I was corrected. I think they had a price change, but about $7.50 for a non-member and $6 for a member. They are also for sale at REI and Beechwood, the local maps, and Appalachian Outfitters and Peninsula, and Breakaway Excursions in Manaway, and Backpackers Shop in Sheffield. And map sales are a key source of revenue for the BTA. So this is what a BTA map would look like. This is the Bedford section, and I don't expect you to read all this, but I just wanted to kind of show the layout of the text. The text will give a mileage for the clockwise direction and a clockwise direction. And also the other thing I want to point out is where it's solid, it means it's off-road. And where it's dotted or dashed, it means it's on road. So we got some road over there. We got a little segments of road over here. But the key thing to point out with that is that when it's solid, it's off-road. But it could be a paved bike path, or it could be sidewalk. So one number that we don't have is how much is paved versus unpaved, because some of our off-road are actually paved, and some of our roads are actually unpaved. But sidewalks count. When I was first hiking this, I got excited when I was going to get to this off-road section. And I kept looking for the off-road section. And I realized that I was walking on the sidewalk. And I got used to that and went, okay, here I am hiking the Buckeye sidewalk. But it's kind of, the Bedford section is a good example of the whole Buckeye Trail in itself, because we'll take you from nice places to another nice place, and sometimes you got to do some road walking in between to connect that loop. Our goal would be to move more and more as we can to off-road. So also want to point out that in 2012 the Buckeye Trail Association did some GPS work, and they had that on our website as being for private use only and not for commercial use. And we had it on there for a while, and then what we found is some other websites were picking that up and using it, and copying it or using it in their websites without alerting the fact that it's 2012 information. There was a story of some hikers that at Yellow Springs they had a 2013 map, and their map said to go west, but their electronic data that they had on their smartphone said to go north. And they expected the electronic data would be the most up to date, and until they got to Springfield and realized that there was no trail anymore. And they realized that what they may not have realized is that 2012 map, 2013 map that they had was the most up to date of the two. So I just put that up there as a word of warning. So if you do find some electronic information that you Google, just beware that it may or may not be right. Chances are that it's right, but there's probably some changes since 2012. And there are some key changes as well. But we have put out some geospatial PDFs. These are maps that you can get on your phone and download, and the BTA sells them for $6.99. The nice thing about this is you'll get the map, you'll have it on your phone, and you use your phone's GPS to locate you on the map. So you can tell that if you're not where that red line is, you're not on the trail. And also, this is through Avenza Maps. And if you own the PDF version of that, the electronic PDF, that you can check for updates. So if the BTA updates the trail, you can download the new update. Coming out in May at TrailFest will be our app from Atlas Guides called Guthook. This is what hikers are using on the AT these days, that they're not using the paper maps. And then old timers will say, well, you can't count on your phone, it's going to die. But they have backup batteries, they have solar chargers, and they have means to do that. I haven't used the Guthook myself, but I know it's very popular, and one of the things that's popular about it is that it connects with other search engines like Google, and so you can look for motels and restaurants nearby by using that. And also, it's kind of crowdsourced, so people can leave notes, about the shelters or whatever, kind of warning. And I think we're gonna be able to use that for people to put alerts so we can know what needs to be maintained. So road walks. A lot of people don't want to do the entire Buckeye Trail because it's, about half road. But some of these roads aren't as bad as you think. Some people don't want to hike the roads because they're worried about traffic, and you can see we're not worried about traffic. Some people don't want to hike roads because it's paved. Well, some of these roads aren't paved, and some are very nice and serenic. And of course, to be honest, these are in southeast Ohio. You can hike these roads for 4 hours and not get passed by a single vehicle, maybe a tractor, maybe a guy on an ATV. This is Ruth Duro, and I could spend another 10 minutes talking about her. Her and her husband finished the North Country Trail, and in her presentation in North Dakota, she said her favorite parts was the road walks, so that's why I included her in my presentation. She said because that's where she met the people. Here's another advantage of road walks. You won't get this on that other trail out east. We had ice cream delivered to us, and this was south of Paynesville, I think. There's no houses on this stretch of road. My friend Dale and I walking, we hear a little brown jug coming up behind us. We look at each other and get out our wallets, and we had ice cream on the trail. So there's a benefit to a road walk. So hiking the Little Loop, start with my, so as I said, it was part of the original trail. And I found in print that there were two camps in the Buckeye Trail Association at the time, one that wanted to go through the Cuyahoga Valley and the metro parks, and the other one wanted to go through the reservoirs and state parks to the east. I think also there was an idea that the western side of the Little Loop was a little more urban, and they wanted to give a more rural option to go on the east side. So it consists of 4.2 sections, if you will. So the Akron, Bedford, Burton, Mogador, and part of the Massillon section. So if you're going to hike the Little Loop, you need those 5 section maps. And we sell bundles, both the Venza, so if you buy the Little Loop bundle, you get a little discount. The Little Loop is not so little. It's 257 miles. I had a friend that just hiked the John Muir Trail, and it was 210 miles, and she came back excited to hike the Little Loop until she found out it was longer than the John Muir Trail. I'm hiking the North Country Trail right now. I'm working my way through Pennsylvania. It's 285 miles. So the entire state of Pennsylvania on the North Country Trail is only like 30 miles longer than the Little Loop right here. So it's not so little. It's just little compared to the bigger loop. So starting out in the Bedford section, our section supervisor is Bob Marecki. Where are you? Bob's hiding over there. In a perfect world, a section supervisor would be in charge of the section, and then he would have lots of trail adopters to adopt 2 or 3 mile segments. And so his job would be to make sure that the trail adopters are sweeping their section of trail at 2, 3, maybe 4 times a year, doing light maintenance, trimming the brush, and painting the blazes. And any major work, they would report back to him, and then he would formulate a plan to take care of that. I think Bob has 2 adopters, so it's not a perfect world yet. 65.8 total miles, 67.5 of that is off-road, which is a pretty good percentage. It begins in Brecksville Reservation, close to the Deer Lick Cave, and there's a triple blaze where you can either go right or turn left. In standard blazing, that would either be the end of the trail or the beginning of the trail, but for our purposes, it's a right if you want to go to the lake and left if you want to go to Cincinnati. You can still go right and get to Cincinnati. You'll just go via the lake. It follows a combination of wooded trails, all-purpose trail, to the Station Road trailhead. And there's 24-hour parking allowed here, and I want to point that out because the Cuyahoga Valley National Park is open 24 hours. You can overnight hike. You can't camp there except for a couple designated places, but you can do night hikes, so it's very popular for that, or stargazing, but not all the parking areas are open 24 hours. If they're part of the Cleveland Metro Parks or the Summit Metro Parks, they might close at dusk or they might close at 11. So if you go on the website for the Cuyahoga Valley National Park and look for the 24-hour parking, they'll list the places. So Station Road is one of them. You cross the steel bridge and you join the Ohio Erie Canal Towpath Trail. I think this was one of the first cool things that I discovered on the trail. This bridge was actually dismantled, refurbished, and re-erected there. You pass the mud catcher, which was a way of catching sediment from a feeder stream to the canal, so that that wall would have went all the way across and the water would have pooled on the other side, and as that got sediment laden, it would settle out. If you go see it now, there's all kinds of rocks and mud on the other side, but they didn't want that getting into the canal. You cross the canal and you go past the Frazee House. You follow road, trail, bridle path, and all-purpose trail. You pass Bridal Veil Falls. You enter Tinker's Creek Gorge, and this is where I started putting my trail plan, my hike plan for my wife, because I got close to one of these edge ravines, and I couldn't see the bottom. And I thought, man, if I slipped here, no one would be able to see me, and my wife doesn't know where I'm at. So since then, especially if I'm alone, but even if I'm somebody else, I leave a hike plan with her so she knows who I'm with, or if I'm alone, where I'm starting, where I'm finishing, and approximately what time. And I always add a couple hours in case I get interested in looking for other things off trail in the woods, or misplaced, as Emma Gatewood would say it. Mostly bridle path to South Chagrin reservations, and eventually you get to the carvings of Henry Church. Some of you may remember that as Squaw Rock, and they changed the name not too long ago to be a little more culturally sensitive. At one time the trail went actually to the carvings, but we found that a lot of times that was closed in the winter. So rather than having the trail go to the carvings itself, our map notes that this would be a nice place to go explore. And it goes pretty close. This is a woman swimming on a serpent, so they're pretty cool. If you haven't been there, one of the places that I discovered that, not too far from where I live, that I would have never known about. Go to Lookabout Lodge, which is on the National Historic Places Registry. When I was there was a craft show going on, so I got to see inside. That's managed by the Cleveland Metro Parks, and you can rent it for parties or meetings. You go past the polo fields. I'm a race car fan, so when I saw the Cleveland Grand Prix, I got excited until I read the sign and went, this is about polo? And I went, wait, this is about polo? We have polo here in Cleveland, and I understand they still have polo matches, so it's on my bucket list to go see a polo match. But yeah, I did not know that. Chagrin River to Gates Mills, and this is one of the first road walks that we're going to encounter. But you go past these cool houses. I think they're cool. Most of them have horse stables with them. And when you're driving by, you can see this stuff, but when you're walking at a slower pace, you can see a lot more detail, and you can stop and take pictures of it. This is a bridge in Gates Mills. It was built in 1899. It was part of the interurban railway that was an electric engine railway that would take people from that area into Cleveland and connect a lot of parts in Geauga County. Chapin State Forest is managed by the Lake Metro Parks. And one of the things in my presentation, I'm going to point out places that you can camp. So our maps would identify these sites, but they allow one-night primitive camping there. There's an overlook to Lake Erie, and you can see where I zoomed in, and I just think it's kind of cool to see downtown from that far away. Go through Penitentiary Glen, and they allow camping there. If you're Captain Blue, who wrote a book about his through hike, they'll let you stay in the gift shop because he had some connections, and it was cold outside, and they felt sorry for him, I guess. Andy Niekamp does a great presentation. If you get a chance to see his presentation on the through hike, he does a really wonderful job about the entire trail. You take some road and sidewalk and all-purpose trail to the Lakefront Trail, which I think is a really gorgeous trail. It follows the coast of Lake Erie, the shoreline. You take road and sidewalk to the Zimmerman Trail through Mentor Marsh. And if you're lucky enough to be hiking with Bob Marecki, he'll point out where the Eagle's Nest is on the other side of the marsh. So if you go hike that, bring your binoculars. You go through Headlands Beach State Park, and you get to the northern terminus. Now, I don't know how we have a terminus on a loop, but we have a northern terminus and a southern terminus. A good story about this rock and the plaque that goes with it is that this plaque was actually for the completion of the trail in 1970. And a few years ago, the 90-year-old wife of the then secretary of the Buckeye Trail at that time said, "Hey, I found this in our basement. Do you guys want it?" Okay. Then we had to decide what to do with it, because the plaque was meant to go where the trail was completed, which was somewhere around Mogador Reservoir, that West Branch in that area, but we don't know where that is. So we decided to put the rock at the northern terminus. And our executive director had a really good time on that rededication speech. He said, because on this date, well, not this date, but another date, at this location, well, not this location, but another location, we dedicate this trail. So that's on the northern terminus right before you get to the boardwalk out to the beach. I think a lot of hikers enjoy taking their pictures on that. A lot of people that do the Little Loop will start and finish their Little Loop hike there. And then that finishes up the Bedford section, and we start the Burton section. The supervisors are Jan and Tim, and they're sitting over here too. This is kind of cool. It's not usually I get all the section supervisors here. I got them almost all of them. 56.9 total miles. 53.6% of that is off-road, which is, not as good as we'd like it to be. We'd like that to be a little higher. It did go higher thanks to Jan and Tim recently. It begins at Headlands Beach. This lighthouse is now a private residence, and they open it to the public one day a year. One of these days, the Crooked River chapter will organize a hike to the lighthouse. We follow roads to the Greenway Corridor, which is rails to trail path. And there's a spur to the Chair Factory Falls. Now, one of the things that I found that I didn't enjoy is when I was first hiking the Buckeye Trail, I was so focused on hiking the Buckeye Trail that I passed all these great places that I could have seen, but I had to hike the Buckeye Trail. I didn't have time to take any detours. And if somebody said, "Hey, you want to go hike something?" I said, "No, it's a nice day. I'm going to go hike the Buckeye Trail." So now that I've done it, I've been able to go, after I came back to that, I said, let's go see these falls. I'm glad I did. It's very nice falls. There was a mill for a chair factory there. So check that out off the Greenway Corridor. We go through the Lake Metro Parks Environmental Learning Center. They've done a really nice job on their trail. We take roads to Girdle Road Reservation. I love this picture. If you see what's going on, they're all checking out the map. The trailblaze is on the other side of the tree. They knew where they were. What we were doing is Jan and Tim had just recently moved the trail to go past a restroom, which is really nice. And they were kind of like, we were comparing where the trail used to go compared to what it goes today. We're kind of critiquing it, They're like, oh yeah, this is much better. So that was a nice improvement that Jan and Tim made. We take roads to the Big Creek Park. Oh, Big Creek Park, yeah. And there's campsites there. For road walks, the nice thing about road walks, that's a good opportunity to take a group hike, because you can kind of spread out and talk rather than being on a single path. This picture I took in the winter, someone else took that in the spring. I think it's kind of funny that we all wind up taking pictures of the same thing. When I flip through Andy Niecamp's book or Chuck and Beth's book, I go, I got a picture of that picnic table. I got a picture of that bridge. I got a picture of that waterfall. I always wind up taking a picture of the same thing. So then we go to the Maple Highlands Trail into Chardon. Chardon is going to become a Buckeye Trail town. I forgot to mention that Mentor became a Buckeye Trail town last year, and we appreciate that. Maple Highlands Trail to the Headwaters Park. That's part of the East Branch Reservoir, and there's camp shelters there. They're the three-sided shelters with the fireplace. I think that'd be a nice place to stay in a cold spring day or a cold fall night. We actually go by a golf course, and that was another reroute that Jan and Tim did that got us off some road into the town of Burton, and we take roads to Camp Asbury. And Camp Asbury is a Presbyterian summer camp. We go through there, and they have shelters there for hikers to camp at. This is the Reverend Bill Graham. That's his name, William Graham. He doesn't go by Billy. And he's pointing out, he led a hike there, which was great, and he's pointing out that they actually blazed a loop around the camp, and they blazed it in orange. And it coincides with the Buckeye Trail, so they help us maintain that portion of the trail. I'm just in the background saying it just means to go that way. And that finishes up the Burton section. The Mogador section, supervisor is Bill Gendra. He's not here today. He lives in Oberlin, so that's why he's not here. 55.4 miles. Only 32% of that is off-road, so not very good, not where we want to be, but that's just the nature of the area out there. So we're on some roads, I think including Rapids Road, which is not a fun road, but it's kind of a necessary as you get from one place to the other, like I talked about. It begins at Headwaters Trail into Manaway, and Manaway became a Buckeye Trail town last year as well. The Breakaway Excursions is there. That's a kayaking and archery and snowshoeing. They sell our maps, and they have a shower there, and they're going to allow through hikers to use the shower. And also they got connections in town if a through hiker needs a place to stay.
Question, you mentioned a few places that are Buckeye Trail town. What does that designation mean?
Well, it's a town that we want to work in close relationship with, that they're going to celebrate our trail in their town, and they're going to include that in their publications. They understand the value of having that in their town, and hopefully we can get some places to camp. And so they'll get signs that designate them as a trail town, so when a through hiker goes through, they know, aha, if I say I'm hiking the Buckeye Trail, people might know what I mean, because some places you say you're hiking if you lose the Buckeye Trail and you say, where's the Buckeye Trail? They'll go, Ohio State? So yeah. We follow roads passing Shaw Woods. We have an agreement there for camping as well. And that agreement goes back to the original owner, Virginia Shaw. And she allowed campers, through hikers, to camp there. And then when she donated that to the park system, they continued with that agreement. So there's some primitive sites there that a through hiker can camp. West Branch offers a nice 8-mile loop. 7 miles of that is on the Buckeye Trail and a mile is across the causeway. One of the signs that people love to take a picture there, and I'm surprised it didn't make my presentation, there's a sign that says poison ivy everywhere. And it probably was covered with poison ivy when I went through there, so I don't have a picture of it, but I bet I could find one. We take a road to Mogador Reservoir. A Countryside Campground is there nearby, and that's a commercial campground. Take road to Quail Hollow Park. Used to be a state park, and now it's a county park. There is camping permitted there for through hikers. When they made that transition, I went to one of the planning sessions, and somebody approached me and says, the Buckeye Trail's not very well marked here, is it? And I said, well, I just went through there, and there's some confusing places in the fields, but it's pretty well blazed. And he said, blazed? I went, oh, you know what? I had an aha moment. We blaze it, we mark it, but we don't tell people what those markings mean. If you look at this, we know it's the Buckeye Trail, but a visitor doesn't know. Someone put some paint on there, but I can go to the Woodland Trail, I can go to the Visitor Center, and some other things. So since then, we've kind of learned, so there's an informational sign there that shows the entire Buckeye Trail, shows a relationship with the American Discovery Trail and the North Country Trail. And it says follow the blue blazes, so people can start knowing that. So that's one of the things that we kind of want to work on, and that's one of the things the Carsonite markers do. So we want to kind of provide some more designation and information that you're on the Buckeye Trail when at these trailheads. And the Mogador section ends in Hartville, and you can get some really good chocolate there. And that's where the Massillon section starts. The supervisor was Mary Hamilton up until recently, and I think I'd like to add a picture of Mary Hamilton using a gas weed whacker, because I don't know what it is with the older generation. It seems like once they hit their mid-70s or early 80s, they don't want to volunteer anymore. But she's been doing this for a long time, and she finally said, you know, I'm going to let somebody else take over. So that position is open. If anybody wants to become a Buckeye Trail section supervisor, you will get 53.7 miles. 46% of that is off-road, mostly because of the towpath. But if you're a little loop hiker, you won't get to the towpath until you hike 19 miles on road and sidewalk. It begins in Hartville. It follows roads to the city of Greene, passes the Massillon Reservoir, and there's camping there, you know, for a fee with a short walk into that. Passes Crystal Lake Park, and finally joining the Ohio Erie Canal Towpath Trail, where the Akron section ends. So I forgot to mention that the Massillon section is part of the Muskingum Lake section, so our chapter. So you're no longer in the protection of the Crooked River chapter at that point. You have to get a 30-day visa, and it's renewable. I'm kidding about that. But we do have an annual border hike where we kind of dispute, and then we sign a treaty. So we actually have a treaty in effect with the Muskegon Lakes chapter, so you'll be permitted to hike there. And then you can keep going on it if you want. But if you want, I could do the Little Loop. The Akron section ends there. So the maps are written clockwise to the big loop. So they will be like in 1,500 feet cross a stream. In 1,700 feet, you come up to Burns Road, go north on Burns Road for 1.2 miles until you get to a bridge. Take a wooded footpath off of that. And if you hike it counterclockwise, you got to go, okay, wait a minute. So it's 1.2 miles from the bridge to the, so you got to hike it backwards. So most hikers that are following the maps will do so in a clockwise direction with reference to the big loop. So Akron is written from north to south. But to continue my presentation around the Little Loop, I'm going to start at the end of Akron, and we're going to hike it backwards, if you will. Not that there is a right way or wrong way. When I lead a group hike, I will start the hike at a larger parking lot where most people can find easier, and then we'll hike to the smaller parking lot. So a lot of people, when they do group hikes, they'll meet where they're going to finish, and then they'll carpool to where they're going to start, and then hike back to their cars, and then the people that drove have to walk back, but usually they get a ride, right? Or if I'm smart and I'm looking at the topo, that, am I going to start here and finish there? Or should I hike it this way and start here and go down there? And one of the words I've learned to hate in these maps is undulates, because if the trail undulates, no matter which way you're going up and downhill. The Buckeye Trail is all downhill. Sometimes you might be going in the wrong direction. So we start with the section supervisor, which is Sonny. He's over there. He gives a lot of help with his nephew, Dane. 57.6 total miles. A whopping 89.9% of that is off-road, mostly because it's either on the towpath or it's through the woods of the Cuyahoga Valley National Park or the other metro parks. So it joins the Massillon section at High Mill Road, and that's where we meet for our border hike as we march south. The Muskegon Lakes chapter hikes north, and then we have a skirmish. We shake hands and hug, and then we take half of them prisoners, and we send half of our guys as spies. And then once we get their prisoners back to our car, we drive them back to the start, and we have a prisoner exchange, and we eat at the Italian restaurant there, and we sign a peace treaty that's good for another year. So I might need your help on that because we had a low turnout last year. So that's one of the reasons I'm doing the presentation, so we can overwhelm them with superior force. The towpath trail continues on into Canal Fulton. Good place to get ice cream at the Cherry Creamery on a hot day, but even if it's cold and rainy, it's always a good time to get ice cream. We go through Clinton and Barberton, and there's primitive camping on the trail there. I believe that's through the Summit Metro Parks. We get to Summit Lake. There's the summit on the towpath. I think it's like 7 foot higher than any other point on the towpath, and we summited that in one day without any help. There's no news crews about it or anything, but we go through Akron, which I think is kind of cool, actually going through the city of Akron. So most people that hike the Buckeye Trail are very familiar with it if they're used to the Cuyahoga Valley. They think it ends in Akron. Nope, you keep following Blue Blaze, you get to the other side. There's a construction detour going right now for the sewer tunnel that they're putting in. The Metro Parks have done a good job with the signage. The towpath trail Buckeye Trail leaves the towpath and then goes into Sand Run, and then comes back at the towpath at Smith Road. And there's campsites there. We also have an agreement with the Akron Motorcycle Club that through hikers, Buckeye Trail hikers, can camp on their premises if they give the proper notice ahead of time. We had a little issue with that before, and we've worked it out, and the current phone numbers and email addresses are on our website. At Botsum Trailhead, the Buckeye Trail actually goes on the original primitive towpath, where the towpath trail crosses the road, goes through the parking lot, past the station. We actually go through the original towpath, which I think is a nice break from, as you're hiking the towpath, on your left, on your left, on your left, on your left. If you hiked it, you know what I mean. It's all the cyclists that are out there. As hikers, we like going out there when it's snowy because we know there's not going to be any cyclists. And then we hear on your left because they got the fat tires. And we're thinking we thought we'd have the trail to ourselves. And I bet they're thinking the same thing. It's cold and snowy out here. Why are people hiking? Bath Road to Deer Run Trail to O'Neill Woods. O'Neill Woods is kind of my favorite part in that section. I'm pointing out the Buckeye Trailblaze there. The Buckeye Trail leaves the Deer Run Trail, and once it leaves the Deer Run Trail, it's quiet, there's no traffic sound, and it's not a very populated part of the trail. The Deer Run Trail gets popular sometimes, but the people that visit there kind of stay on that loop trail, which goes down some steps or up some steps depending on which direction you hike it. But once you get off of that trail, it's quiet. I think as many times as I hike that area, I think I've seen only one or two other hikers. Rejoin the towpath trail at Ira Road and continues past several locks into Peninsula. Dell Road and Old Route 303 to Pine Lane Trailhead, and there's camping at the Spicy Lamb. The phone number and email address is listed in our map for that. It's a slight detour on a White Blaze Trail to the Spicy Lamb Farm. Then you get into Boston. The Trail Mix store is there. You can buy Mitchell's ice cream. You can also get cold drinks. It's a great place to take a break before you head up to Blue Hen Falls. I've got a picture out of order, so I'm going to back up a little bit. But Blue Hen Falls is like an eighth of a mile off the trail. And then if you want, you can continue up the stream or down the stream to Buttermilk Falls off trail. Snowville Road near Jate. And this is the picture that's out of place. The trail runners call this the piano because there's 88 steps. So that's between Boston and Blue Hen. On April 1st, I scheduled a work party to put a chairlift on that, but it was April 1st and nobody believed me. And so I don't know if anybody showed up. I didn't. Ottawa Point has backpack sites, and they're free, but you got to reserve them. There's a number to call, the Cleveland Metro Parks. I think they like 10 days notice. And they're available from Memorial Day to Labor Day. I think that's when they turn the water on. And they practice leave no trace principles. So there's a camping triangle. You've got your kitchen area where you're going to prepare your food. You've got your tent area, and then you've got an area to store your food. So that's kind of the triangle that they make. So you're not storing your food where you've prepared it. May have dropped crumbs that are going to attract critters. You can let the critters get those, but there's another place to hang your food, and you're not sleeping with your food. And then the Akron section begins back where we started, and if you notice a different picture of different people at the entrance to the Brexville Reservation. And so congratulations, you just completed a virtual loop around the trail. Here's your virtual map patch, so you can take a picture of that and save it. If you did complete the trail, this is the map patch you would have gotten. We're out of those, but we're redesigning the patch to be more similar to the rest of our patches. And those are free. You know, once you finish the little loop and you've done it all, you can send an email to littleloop@buckeyetrail.com. But I'm not done. We have a vision of our saying of get hiking, get dirty, get involved, get connected. So I've got some business cards over there that have our Facebook page and our meetup page for the Crooked River chapter. So if you want to do some hikes with us or help us maintain the trail, we would love to have you do that. If you want to volunteer, send us an email, volunteer@buckeyetrail.org. That's trail adopters, professional services. We are a volunteer organization. We have a paid executive director. We have 2 employees that are actually AmeriCorps, so we pay part of their salary and AmeriCorps pays the other part. We have a part-time employee that we have some grant and donations to bring him up to full-time on specific tasks for the next few months. And we have a clerk that comes in once a week to write thank yous and pay bills and do some other paperwork. Other than that, the rest is volunteers. And it's so easy to maintain a 1,400-mile trail around the state in 48 counties with 5 paid people. So if you want to volunteer and help us out, I encourage you to do that. I also encourage you to become members, $30 for an annual membership fee. You'll get our quarterly magazine. You'll get discounts at certain places like Vertical Runner gives 10% discount for footwear. and you're just going to be part of the greatest idea ever. So I encourage you to become members if you're not already. And that brings me to the terminus of my presentation. So I don't know how I did on time. Did I go longer? I think I did okay. Questions?